I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have an installment in my 18th century novel project for you. We will be looking at The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman by Laurence Sterne from 1767. Kind of. We'll talk about that in a minute. Please do be aware this video will contain spoilers, if that is possible for this book, because not a lot happens, but if you don't want to know about it, you should leave now. I will begin by giving a little bit of history and a brief summary of the book, then moving to usually its major themes. It's more stylistic choices in this installment, and then I will give my thoughts on it as a book. Let's jump in. Laurence Sterne was Anglo-Irish, born on November 24th, 1713, and died on March 18th, 1768 at the age of 54. He was a clergyman. He published a lot of sermons in addition to some novels, most notably Tristram Shandy. So, this book is interesting because it was actually published in 9 volumes that came out between 1759 and 1767. So when you're like giving the publication date for it, you go with 1767 because that's when it was finished. But like it was coming out for almost an entire decade. It was a very popular book, but not a big hit with the critics, and I can see why. And it is considered a very early precursor to modernist and postmodernist novels because of the use of stream of consciousness and the experimental stuff Sterne is doing. So what is this about? Nothing. Like, I'm not kidding, nothing happens. So we are with our narrator, Tristram Shandy, supposedly getting the story of his life and his opinions. We begin with his birth. However, it takes an entire 3 volumes for him to actually be born. I'll complain about that later, though. At his birth, there is a series of misfortunes. The Dr. Slop, who Tristram Shandy's father insisted upon having at the birth when his wife did not want him there. He used forceps to get the baby out and ended up crushing his nose. And yeah, so Tristram Shandy's father is of the opinion that like a long nose is very important for a man to have. So yeah. Smushed nose. Then he is christened incorrectly. His father wants to name him some straight up ridiculous name that I cannot remember, but the beginning of it sounds a bit like Tristram. It like has the tris at the beginning. However, his father thinks that Tristram is a horrible name. It is like the worst name to ever have. But he tells the maid the name that he wants the kid to have. The maid is supposed to tell the clergyman who's baptizing him, or christening him, I think it would be, in Church of England. And she kind of mangles it, and the clergyman's like, that's not a name. You must be thinking of Tristram. So he is christened this name that his father thinks is like a complete ill omen of everything. And then we move up a few years and he is accidentally circumcised when a windowsill falls on him. Yeah. Other than that, we're hearing stories about his Uncle Toby, We're hearing a lot of various other stories that don't make any sense and have nothing to do with anything. There's not a lot of plot. So yeah, that's like basically what's going on here in a nutshell, and we take 9 volumes to have all that. Tristram is not born until volume 3, okay? Poor Mrs. Shandy goes into labor in volume 1. This kid is not born into volume 3 because of the stylistic choices we're gonna move into here. So usually I would go with major themes. However, I'm like, themes? What themes? It didn't even have a plot. Which is probably me just being kind of a little too mean. I'm sure there are themes in this. I didn't pick up on them, really. So instead, I'm going to talk about some of his stylistic choices. And I suppose this first one I'm talking about is also kind of a theme. So the first stylistic choice is digressions. So everything takes so long because our narrator, Tristram, or just Sterne, keeps going off on these very long tangents about anything and everything. Sterne writes from Tristram's narration, "For in this long digression, which I was accidentally led into, as in all my digressions, one only expected, there is a master stroke of digressive skill, the merit of which has all along, I fear, been overlooked by my reader, not for want of penetration in him, but because 'tis an excellence seldom looked for, or expected indeed, in a digression, and it is this, that though my digressions are all fair, as you observe, and that I fly off from what I am about, as far and as often too as any writer in Great Britain, yet I constantly take care to order affairs so that my main business does not stand still in my absence." I don't agree. But yeah, so Sterne is drawing attention to the fact that, like, yes, these digressions are purposeful. What is their purpose? I don't really know, but okay. At the beginning of another chapter, he writes, "Writing, when properly managed, as you may be sure I think mine is but a different name for conversation. And as no one who knows what he is about in good company would venture to talk all, so no author who understands the just boundaries of decorum and good breeding would presume to think all. The truest respect which you can pay to the reader's understanding is to have this matter amicably, and leave him something to imagine, in his turn as well as yourself. For my own part, I am eternally paying him compliments of this kind, and do all that lies in my power to keep his imagination as busy as my own. 'Tis his turn now. I have given an ample description of Dr. Slop's sad overthrow, and of his sad appearance in the back parlor. His imagination must now go on with it for a while. Let the reader imagine then that Dr. Slop has told his tale, and in what words and with what aggravations his fancy chooses. Let him suppose that Obadiah has told his tale also, and with such rueful looks as affected concern as he thinks will best contrast the two figures as they stand by each other. Let him imagine that my father has stepped upstairs to see my mother, and to conclude this work of imagination, let him imagine the doctor washed, rubbed down, condoled with, felicitated, got into a pair of Obadiah's pumps, stepping forwards toward the door, upon the very point of entering upon the action." So, like, sometimes he goes into a long diversion and we're given all this unnecessary information, but other times he's like, oh no, I will leave it up to my reader's imagination. I'm sure there is some purpose here. Again, I didn't get it. And he, like, breaks the fourth wall quite a lot in regards to these digressions. So at one point, this is still all leading up to the birth. We're in volume 3 right now. At one point, his father says, "It is 2 hours and 10 minutes, and no more," cried my father, looking at his watch, "since Dr. Slop and Obadiah arrived. And I know not how it happens, brother Toby, but to my imagination, it seems almost an age." because it's been 3 volumes in this book because of these digressions. So like Sterne is self-aware. He's obviously doing this for a reason. I don't know why. And some of these digressions, shortly after that quote I just read, we get to another chapter. And Sterne writes in Tristram Shandy's voice, "All my heroes are off my hands. 'Tis the first time I've had a moment to spare, and I'll make use of it and write my preface." We are 173 pages in. We are in volume 3, and he is writing the preface. And then we have, literally, is that focusing? I can't tell if it's focusing. The author's preface. Like, what is this book? What is this? Another time where he's calling attention to his digressions. Is it not a shame to make 2 chapters of what passed in going down 1 pair of stairs? For we are got no farther yet than to the first landing, and there are 15 more steps down to the bottom, and for aught I know, as my father and my Uncle Toby are in a talking humor, there may be as many chapters as steps. Let that be as it will, sir. I can no more help it than my destiny. A sudden impulse comes across me. Drop the curtain, Shandy. I drop it. Strike a line here. Across the paper, Tristram. I strike it. And hey for a new chapter. Then, in volume 4, later on, his brother passes away suddenly. From this moment, I am to be considered as heir apparent to the Shandy family, and it is from this point properly that the story of my life and my opinions sets out. With all my hurry and precipitation, I have but been clearing the ground to raise the building, and such a building do I foresee it will turn out as never was planned and as never was executed since Adam. So all these 4 volumes, oh no, I'm just raising the ground. I haven't even started building the building yet. I weep. I weep. There's this one chapter in volume 6 where he continues to discuss the fact of his digressions. He writes, "I am now beginning to get fairly into my work, and by the help of a vegetable diet with a few other cold seeds, I make no doubt but I shall be able to go on with my Uncle Toby's story and my own in a tolerable straight line. Now," and then he shows these lines. "These were the 4 lines I moved in through my 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th volumes. In the 5th volume, I have been very good, and the precise line I have described in it being this. By which it appears that except at the curve marked A, where I took a trip to Nevers, and the indented curve B, which is the short airing when I was there with the Lady Bossier and her page, I have not taken the least frisk of a digression, till John de la Casse's devils led me through the round you see marked D. As for C, they are nothing but parentheses, and the common ins and outs incidents to the lives of the greatest ministers of state, and when compared with what men have done, or with my own transgressions as to letters A, B, D, they vanish into nothing. In the last volume, I have done better still, for from the end of Lefebvre's episode to the beginning of my Uncle Toby's campaigns, I have scarce stepped a yard out of my way. If I mend at this rate, it is not impossible, by the good leave of his grace of Benvenento's devils, but I may arrive hereafter at the excellency of going on and even thus." And then we've got a straight line, which is a line drawn as straight as I could draw it by a writing master's ruler, borrowed for that purpose, turning neither to the right hand or to the left. digressions. Big part of this. It's a choice. It's certainly a choice. There is a lot of other experimental stuff going on structurally. Most notable is the black page, which is just a page that is entirely blacked out. So yeah, just a black page. That is done for the death of a character, Yorick, who is kind of, he's a parson and he's kind of Sterne's self-insert from what I can tell, and he actually appears in other works of Sterne's as well. There is similarly the marbled page, which apparently made a friend of mine over on Tumblr actually throw the book across the room when she got to it. And he writes at this point, he is talking about some tracts that his father had read and studied, and read, my unlearned reader, read. Or, by the knowledge of the great saint Paralipomenon, I tell you beforehand, you had better throw down the book at once, for without much reading, by which your reverence knows, I mean much knowledge, you will no more be able to penetrate the moral of the next marbled page, motley emblem of my work, than the world with all its sagacity has been able to unravel the many opinions, transactions, and truths which still lie mystically hid under the dark veil of the black one. So it's like drawing attention to the fact that what he's talking about is incomprehensible. At least that's my reading of it. Okay. Also have missing pages. So we have a chapter that ends on page 271, and when we flip the page, we notice that the chapter is that the page number is now 282 all of a sudden. And he says, "No doubt, sir, there is a whole chapter wanting here, and a chasm of 10 pages made in the book by it. But the bookbinder is neither a fool, nor a knave, nor a puppy, nor is the book a jot more imperfect, at least upon that score, but on the contrary, the book is more perfect and complete by wanting the chapter than having it, as I shall demonstrate to your reverences in this matter. I question first, by the by, whether the same experiment might not be made as successfully upon sundry other chapters. But there is no end, and please your reverences, in trying experiments upon chapters. We have had enough of it. So there's an end to that matter. But before I begin my demonstration, let me only tell you that the chapter which I have torn out, and which otherwise you would all have been reading just now, instead of this, was the descriptions of my father's, my Uncle Toby's, Trim's, and Obadiah's setting out and journeying to the visitations at blank. So weird. So weird. I'm also like, yes, there are so many chapters that could have been taken out just like that. But hey, you know. Okay. Another really notable, interesting thing he does is having a blank page for the reader to draw what they believe a character looks like. So we are meeting the Widow Wadman, who is apparently very beautiful. And he says, "To conceive this right, call for pen and ink. Here's paper ready to your hand. Sit down, sir, paint her to your own mind, as like your mistress as you can, as unlike your wife as your conscience will let you. 'Tis all one to me. Please but your own fancy in it." And then there's just a blank page. And you turn. Was ever anything in nature so sweet, so exquisite? Then, dear sir, how could my Uncle Toby resist it? Thrice happy book, thou will have one page at least within thy covers, which malice will not blacken, and which ignorance cannot misrepresent. Okay. Weird. It's very weird. Slightly less weird is the fact that as the narrator, Tristram has whole conversations with his listeners or his readers. So I have a few examples marked down. So he occasionally puts in this reference to my dear Jenny, who it's like kind of assumed is his mistress. I must beg leave before I finish this chapter to enter a caveat in the breasts of my fair reader, and it is this, not to take it absolutely for granted from an unguarded word or two which I have dropped in it, that I am a married man. I own the tender appellation of my dear, dear Jenny, with some other strokes of conjugal knowledge interspersed here and there, might naturally enough have misled the most candid judge in the world into such a determination against me. All I plead for in this case, madam, is strict justice, and that you do so much of it, to me as well as to yourself, as not to prejudge or receive such an impression of me, till you have better evidence that I am positive at present can be produced against me. Not that I can be so vain or unreasonable, madam, as to desire that you should therefore think that my dear, dear Jenny is my kept mistress. No, that would be flattering my character in the other extreme, and giving it an air of freedom, which perhaps it has no kind of right to. All I contend for is the utter impossibility for some volumes that you, or the most penetrating spirit upon earth, should know how this matter really stands. It is not impossible, but that my dear, dear Jenny, tender as the appellation is, may be a child. May be my child. Consider, I was born in the year 18, nor is there anything unnatural or extravagant in the supposition that my dear, dear Jenny may be my friend. Friend? Which seems to be an the reader, the madam, like interposing into this rant. Surely, madam, a friendship between the two sexes may subsist and be supported without, fie, Mr. Shandy, without anything, madam, but that tender and delicious sentiment which ever mixes in friendship where there is a difference of sex. Does this repeatedly with a sir and a madam, and sir and madam like have a few, like the occasional like line to say, basically. It's definitely an interesting method. Here's another example. How could you, madam, be so inattentive in reading the last chapter? I told you in it that my mother was not a papist. Papist? You told me no such thing, sir. Madam, I beg leave to repeat it over again, that I told you as plain, at least as words. By direct inference, could tell you such a thing. Then, sir, I must have missed a page. No, madam. You have not missed a word. Then I was asleep, sir. My pride, madam, cannot allow you that refuge. Then I declare I know nothing at all about the matter. That, madam, is the very fault I lay to your charge, and as punishment for it, I do insist upon that you immediately turn back, that is, as soon as you get to the next full stop, and read the whole chapter over again. I did read the whole chapter over again. In fact, he does not say anything of the sort. So it's just weird stuff like that. Having whole conversations with these readers or listeners. Sterne also calls attention quite frequently to the fact that this is a comedy. It's making fun of stuff. Point, he says, had this volume been a farce, which, unless everyone's life and opinions are to be looked upon as a farce as well as mine, I see no reason to suppose. But it is, you know? Like, it is a farce. And then the very last sentence of the whole book really just sums up, he has been telling a story about a cock and a bull. And, Lord, said my mother, what is all this story about? "A cock and bull," said Yorick, "and one of the best of its kind I ever heard. A cock and bull story. Bullshit. It's bullshit." The whole book is bullshit. It really is, too. So that's what I'm going to talk about stylistically, for lack of themes. What did I think of this as a book? I hated this, if you can't tell. Like, it was funny for maybe 20 pages. And then the digressions got old real quick. The constant, like the preface in the middle of the book. It's bullshit. Oh my God. I hated it. I hated it so much. Nothing happens. There's no point. I didn't even find most of it funny. There was literally one single part in the whole book that I liked. And it is a story about his Uncle Toby. There's a fly buzzing around. "Go," says he one day at dinner, to an overgrown one, a fly, which had buzzed about his nose and tormented him cruelly all dinner time, and which, after infinite attempts, he had caught at last as it flew by him. "I'll not hurt thee," says my Uncle Toby, rising from his chair and going across the room with the fly in his hand. "I'll not hurt a hair on thy head. Go," says he, lifting up the sash and opening his hand as he spoke to let it escape. "Go, poor devil, get thee gone. Why should I hurt thee? This world surely is wide enough to hold both thee and me." That was the one bright point in this entire book. Look how long this is. Like that scene, I was like, oh. There is room enough in the world to hold both thee and me. Like I was like, oh, that's actually rather lovely. But then the rest of this book is infuriating. I am sure that there is a type of person who would like this book. And actually, I think I was supposed to be buddy reading it with a friend from school. That didn't really work out, but I do know that he read it and he was enjoying it. And he is a person that really likes modernist and postmodernist novels. So that makes sense, since this is a precursor to that style. I am very Victorian. I like my novel to be an actual novel. I like to have a plot and that we're going along with, you know. And this just doesn't have it. So this is not my style of book at all. I would have DNF'd this if I hadn't been reading it for this project. And I was asked by several people, like, why don't you just DNF? And I'm like, I'm reading it for a video. So I suffered through. I did a lot of skimming, which is probably why I didn't pick up on any real themes other than these stylistic things I've talked about. Or they're not there, I don't know. But yeah, I tested this. I gave this 1 star. I very rarely give books 1 star. Usually I'm like, oh, there's something that is worth like a half a star to throw in. No, I hated this. I despise this. I know a lot of people think it's quite funny. I'm just not that person. This is not my type of humor. This is not my type of novel. I wanted to strangle him. So yeah, that is my thoughts and feelings on the life and opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman. Let me know down in the comments, have you read this? What did you think of it? Do you agree with my points? Do you completely disagree? Did you really enjoy it? What are some of the themes that you noticed? Please tell me, because I was at a loss. Yeah, like, if you like this book, please tell me why and tell me what you saw in it, because it makes me kind of sad to hate a book as much as I hated this. And like, I would like to think there was something in it, and I want to know what that something was to try to understand that. So yeah, let me know. So that was the life and opinions of Tristram Shandy, gentlemen. Next time we will be looking at Mary, a fiction by Mary Wollstonecraft from 1788. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.